Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL. George Morgan here, your commentator, alongside me, TK, who is going to be rounding off the season with me. Down the inside, absolutely impossible scene. This is for the win between these two.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He needs to get it done now.
Blakey will dive to the inside.
We're robust. We've got our elbows out.
Ronar takes the lead.
Because here comes Alfie Butcher.
Can't really complain with that one.
It's not going to be easy. The pressure is on, of course.
Jarno Watmere is your champion.
Hello everybody, hopefully you have had an exceptional Monday so far, and fingers crossed we might be able to make it just that little bit better, because we are of course back for the first time in season 40. It is PSGL PS F1 on F1 25. Everybody, I believe, is absolutely hyped for this, and we're in a brilliant circuit to kick us off. My name is Tom, I'll be guiding you through, and alongside me, I'm delighted to say, I think this is the first time that we'll be partnering up. It is my good friend Ghost. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and an honour to be partnering up with you for this week. I'll be usually on F2 this season, but here for F1 today. I'm really looking forward to it.
And of course, F2 has just started about an hour ago. I think the race should be still up and running, but we're coming over here now to see the big boys fighting it out for the first time on F1 25, excluding the social races. And I'm really looking forward to this one. As you can see from the title, it is round one at Austria, the Red Bull Ring. We saw that in real life about a week ago. It was actually a pretty exciting race. Two McLarens battling very, very hard. Ghost, what can we expect from this circuit as a season opener? The drivers maybe not quite acclimatised to this handling model yet. It is a very nice handling model to drive. I've experienced it myself. I'm a big fan. What can we expect from this first race?
We can expect extremely close qualifying times for a start on this circuit. It's such a short circuit with so few corners and so little room for error. It's really going to take an absolute barnstormer of a lap to take pole here in F1 at this circuit, and you've got to nail every single corner. And really, it's the type of circuit that if you get one corner slightly wrong, it's most likely lap over. So the margins are going to be very fine, and it's going to be an extremely close qualifying session. Very unpredictable, I'm sure.
Yeah, so many things the drivers are going to have to watch out for. Track limits could be a big one. If you're just overextending yourself ever so slightly, you could find yourself over those white lines and ruining your laps. Obviously, it's a very short lap, so we are going to be seeing quite a lot of runs throughout the session. I do think it's a great way to start. It takes us back almost to 2020, wasn't it, with the COVID-delayed season, starting in Austria, and it was an absolute banger to kick off that real-life Formula 1 season. Hopefully, we get a race that is of similar quality. Just going to go through some of the admin to kick off the season, starting, of course, with the calendar. You know where we are on this fine Monday evening. It is the Austrian Grand Prix, and then we head around the world for 12 weeks plus a break week in between rounds 2 and 4, going to Jeddah, then to Spa-Francorchamps. Then we have said break week, couple of break weeks actually. I obviously missed that, should pay a little bit more attention to the calendar graphic. Imola and Silverstone back to back, very legendary circuits. Then into Hungary, much different, very twisty, turny, could be a bit of a sweat fest. Then we have Bahrain, which has had some changes for F1 25, then to the break week, and then the final stretch, the quintuplet of races to finish off season number 40. Texas, COTA, Japan, Las Vegas, Brazil, and then we head to Mexico to round out the campaign. Very, very exciting calendar. Any circuits on there, Ghost, that you're really, really looking forward to seeing us take on over the next 14 weeks?
Oh, I think it would be remiss not to mention Silverstone after the race we had at the weekend. But I think there's not a lot of circuits that on that calendar that really I'm not excited for, honestly. Every single one of them can produce an absolutely fantastic race. I think the ones like Jeddah, Hungary, Las Vegas are going to be the ones that will be the biggest tests of skill of the drivers, possibly Japan as well. But then you can't beat a good old race around Silverstone, Spa, and a Mexico finale is going to be a great spectacle as well. You'll have plenty of last lap moves, I'm sure, and hopefully, all being well, fingers crossed, a last lap move for the championship. Wouldn't that be nice? But yeah, there's a lot to enjoy about this calendar. Really looking forward to each and every week.
Absolutely. And we're just loading in now. We've got the green ticks in the countdown. So we're just going to have a quick look at the driver lineup. If you were here last season, you will recognise a lot of these names. The reigning champion, it is Mateo, this time driving for Aston Martin instead of Alpine, pulling off the heist of the century, winning the last 2 races to snatch the title away from Epic Vale. A lot of familiar faces in there as well. Alex Lofer, Francesco Largo, both finished inside the top 5 in the standings last time out. And you'll see some veterans almost of this scene. Marius Formula, Yassir Saki, Brando's in there still, Finlay, Fraser, Enzo, Sabaton. We've got the whole band back together for the start of F1 25, haven't we?
Oh, we do. It's fantastic. And honestly, from what I've seen across divisions and even leagues, there's a lot of old guard of various leagues all around sim racing that have come back for this game, whether they had a break from F1 24 due to it being a little more unpopular, or whether they had, whether it's been a while since they raced, and F1 25 with the surge of new drivers has been the perfect time to come back to racing. So it's been lovely to see, and it's always nice to see old and new faces alike sharing a grid and seeing how they battle each other.
100%. And we are getting going though. We've already had a minute. Count them down. 60 seconds gone, down to 17 if you are new as well to PSGL. We're having an 18-minute short qualifying session, following that one up with a 50% race. I was going to get mixed up because it's a 36-lap race here at the Austrian Grand Prix. 50% of the real-life 72-lap races. And currently in the V-Carb, we are watching one of the new faces. It is Zinedine driving the Visa Cash App RB car with the number 93 on the side of that beautiful, I have to say, beautiful white and Red Bull coloured livery. And to kick us off, would you like to take us, Ghost, around a lap of the Red Bull Ring, the Austrian Grand Prix circuit, for the first time in PSGL on F1 25?
I would absolutely love to. So here comes Zinedine round the final corner, and he's going to get the best exit he possibly can. DRS open all the way down towards turn 1 and into 8th gear. He's going to brake at about just after the 100-meter board, cutting that curb as much as he dares to get the best line possible as he hurtles down now towards turn 2, which is this little kink, and then turn 3, down the gears. It's really difficult to get the braking right into this corner. So easy to lock up, but Zinedine has managed that very, very well. Now, down towards turn 4, we'll see some overtakes here as well, I'm sure, as the race goes ahead. Braking at about 75 meters, a little wide of the curb there for Zinedine, but I'm not sure whether these drivers are going to want to ride that curb or not. Now, up towards turn 6, left-hander, very quick, but very difficult to control the car. It always seems like you're going to understeer out of that corner, but Zinedine managing it well. Turn 7, he's done well as well as he heads down towards the last 2 corners. Now this quick double right-hander flicks the steering in to turn 9, and finally turn 10, getting that curb spot on, and the best exit he can with DRS open to the line for 1 minute 3.0. A very strong opening lap there from the man who narrowly missed out on the PSF3 title last season.
He's got a decent buffer over Mario's Formula, just under 0.3 per second. Looked like there was maybe a little bit of time on the table. Wasn't quite attacking the curbs in particular through the final couple of corners, just trying to confirm the lap was complete. And we have had a couple of invalidations. Some of the bigger names, Mateo, reigning champion, back-to-back reigning champion invalidating. Same with Francesco Largo in the Mercedes car. Alex Lofer finished 3rd last time out. Finlay in the Haas has jumped up into 2nd of the 3 times we've got so far, 103.1. That lap from Zinedine looking fairly nice at the moment. You will notice also ghosting has been turned back off. For the end of last game, final season of F1 24, we had ghosting off to try and eradicate any cheeky slipstream that the drivers might have been trying to nab. Now we've got it back on, and that should mean we won't have a lobby reset. Oscar slots in just behind Zinedine by 15 milliseconds. Can Alex Lofer break the 102 barrier? Yes, he can, and there's a 102.9. The first driver to get to the 62-second mark and puts a little bit of distance between himself and his main competitors.
Yeah, incredibly impressive times already, and they're only going to get faster. And you can see just how close they all are, less than a tenth between 2nd and 5th, and that is only going to get closer and closer as more times come in. I'm riding on board with Ryder in the Red Bull at the moment as he comes through the final sector. There's a couple cars ahead of him as well, but Ryder through turn 9. Owen goes to the top of the standings with a 2.8. Very, very nice time from the Alpine driver as the Red Bull of Ryder goes to P10, quite some way down. around, just 100th behind Fraser, but over half a second behind Owen. And on a lot of tracks, half a second is, you know, it's still a decent margin, but it's something that you can see yourself getting back. But at a track like Austria, half a second is a world away. So Ryder's going to need a huge improvement if he wants to be competitive in this qualifying session, as Kazizel in the Williams goes to P3. Impressive lap from him as well. But Owen is a world apart at the moment from Alex Lofer and everyone behind. Over a 10th gap in Austria is a long, long way.
Absolutely, and don't be surprised by the time we get to the end of this qualifying session to see maybe even the top 10 drivers within a 10th of a second. If you remember back to Silverstone in season 39, we had the top 8, and bear in mind that is a longer circuit than this and a more technical circuit than this. We had the top 8 drivers separated by less than a 10th of a second. That is how competitive, and that is how challenging these PSGL qualifying sessions can be. It almost turns into a shootout right at the end of the session, just to try and nab. Maybe it's only a 100th of a second, but it could get you 3, maybe even 4 places on the grid. Qualifying absolutely crucial. And we need to talk about the potential racecraft on this game as well. Slipstream and DRS training not quite as important as it was before. The dirty air, it'll be really interesting to see what effect that has on the drivers. Can they follow us closely? How do they manage not only the tyre temperatures, but the engine temperatures as well? The drivers are going to have to be careful of. It almost becomes a little bit more realistic. You're managing a lot more things other than just the wear of the tyres and, of course, the 19 other drivers around you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's having driven on it myself the last couple of months. Obviously, it's certainly very different to previous games in terms of how severe the dirty air can be. You really notice it as soon as you go behind another car. You immediately have a lot more understeer, and it's really difficult to get round corners in the same way. I think we'll see it have less of an effect around this circuit than we might do in future circuits on the calendar, because Austria is already quite a DRS train heavy circuit, and because there's so few corners for things to go wrong, it's fairly easy to stay on a DRS train as long as you don't make too many mistakes. And even then, you can get some real pile-ups in terms of a lot of cars in one area down towards turn 3 a lot of the time on this circuit, and that might give drivers that have fallen out of the train a chance to get back into it. So I'm not expecting it to have too much effect in terms of the trains today, but it's certainly going to have an effect on the drivers, and they're going to have to really consider it as they head through the middle sector and last sector of the circuit.
It's going to be fascinating to see who can adapt quickest, who can make that jump from F1 24, which was a little bit template now you look at it. You know, it was very easy to follow, very easy to stay glued to the rear diffuser of the car in front. With this game, we don't necessarily think that's going to be quite the case. We've got 15 times on the board, and if you were watching earlier, Nikosos and Volokongan playing with fire a little bit coming out of the final corner, just about sticking it within the track limits and managing to go into P5 and P8 respectively. It is very close from third place Kazizel on that 103.0. Then you go down to Rainy Bakar in 10th on a 103.1, a tenth and a half separating 7 drivers. It could potentially get even closer than that. Marius Formula does a purple first sector, almost matching the beautiful pink of that Alpine livery. Don't necessarily take the sector times and the colours on the track map quite to heart. They can be a little bit off sometimes, so just take that with a bit of a pinch of salt and more look at the delta time that Marius Formula is finding time. It was a little bit wide of the apex, potentially coming out of turns 4 and 5, and then into the two tricky endless long left-hand corners in the middle sector. He's up by a quarter of a second though, and Marius Formula with that time of a 103.3 could really be challenging in the high 109s if he can just get this lap time on the board. Final couple of corners, very difficult to get right when you are so on the edge of the car. The tyres are going to be screaming for a little bit of mercy. Also left a bit of time on the table through the final corner, just squared the corner up, but does go into position 3. It's Alpine 1-3, good start to the season for the Endstone boys, 102.8 and 102.9 respectively.
Yeah, very strong lap from Mario's Formula. It was somewhat tricky through a couple of corners there, but he pretty much nailed most of the circuit. And I think what's really interesting to watch here is the driver's ERS usages over the lap, because it does differ from driver to driver. Some drivers like burning everything down towards turn 3 and then down towards turn 4, and then others like to save a little bit more for the run down to turn 9 later in the final sector. So it is interesting to see those differences. Of course, over the whole lap, as long as you use all your ERS in theory, it's going to be a similar effect, but it just depends on where you want the best exits and where you want that little advantage to come from. Francesco Largo, meanwhile, in his Mercedes, going to second place, the first driver to get within a tenth of Owen, but it's still 800ths of a second. You know, on most tracks that's not a lot, but in Austria that is going to feel like quite a significant gap for Francesco Largo if he wants to have another go at that one.
We could be seeing somebody stealing a march though on Owen, because Oscar very, very quick in the first couple of sectors, up by 2/10 and is tracking very, very nicely as we approach the final couple of corners. A little bit wobbly going through the penultimate one and clattering the sausage curb on the inside of turn number 10, and now charging up to the line. Will it be pole? No. Poor final sector, lost about a tenth to his personal best. Slots in to second place on that 102.9. Numbers are very difficult, everybody. Let's be honest. A couple of important invalidations as well. Alex Lofer invalidating on his attempt. He is going again and has just apparently set a purple first sector. And Zinedine as well was our original provisional pole sitter on that 103 flat, invalidating also coming out of turn number 8. Just maybe a little bit lazy with the loud pedal coming out and just running over the curbs on the right hand side. Rider down in the second Red Bull jumps up into 6th position, 103 flat. You've got to be in the 102s, you imagine, if you're going to be competitive. Speak of competitive, Finlay with a 102.8 sets the fastest time, stealing it away from Owen, who's held it for about 5 minutes or so. But Alex Lofer, somebody in the chat saying, watch him pop up with a 102.5. Well, he's looking very, very nice. Maybe a bit of dirty air through the final corner and running wide, and throws all of it in the nearest skip that he can find. What would it have been? It would have been a 102.8, slotting him into 3rd position. But that is a big, big error for one of the drivers that's going to be one of the perennial contenders to take pole position with only 6.5 minutes left in the session. Enzo Sabaton was racing in the British racing green of Aston Martin last season. Now in the lime green of Kick Sauber, also jumps up into 2nd position, bumping Owen down even further.
Yeah, I think Alex Lofer will be disappointed with that. P3, of course, in the standings at the end of last season. So he's going to be one to watch for this season as well. But invalidating at the final corner is always tough on the mental. And he'll have to sort of put that behind him for his next attempt, because, you know, once you've invalidated in the final corner once, on the next lap you're going to sort of instinctually want to be a bit more careful and not do it again. But at the same time, with everyone so close and so competitive in this PSF1 division, you've got to fight for every single thousandth of a second that you can. And Alex Lofer will have to have that in the back of his mind going through the final corner on his next attempt. But very impressive from Enzo Sabaton to get into P2. But at the moment, Finley's laps still standing strong, but the laps are getting closer as we predicted.
Good final set from Nico Source. Jumps up 1 millisecond ahead of his teammate Francesco Largo. Was actually down by a third of a tenth through the first couple of sectors, pulling it out of the bag in the final couple of corners to get himself a decent lap and get up into position number 6. Another driver that's made a mistake. Kazizel was 3rd once upon a time, now down in P12 and making a mistake on his flying lap. Car number 11 will be hoping to start higher than 11th, but at the moment it's 1 place behind in position number 12. Volokongen at one stage also was nestled comfortably inside the top 10, although I think there may have been a bit of a mistake for the Papaya McLaren driver. Just finished a lap of a 104.7, so definitely a bit of a whoopsie around there. And Rainy Bakar also invalidating down in P17 for the Kick Sauber team, that of course picked up that podium with Nico Hulkenberg. That was quite a moment, wasn't it, at the British Grand Prix? Just slotting in behind the dominant Papaya McLaren cars. It doesn't quite look like it's going to be a mirror image of real life, though, with one McLaren in 4th, the other down is 16th. Volokongen needs to try and get a competitive time on the board, and there was actually a really nice stat about Volokongen from last season. I'm just going to pull the standings up on my monitor. He took part in all 9 races and finished inside the top 10 in every single one of them, without scoring a podium. It was almost a theme running through season 39. A couple of 4th places in rounds 2 and 3, but after that didn't finish higher than 6th, but incredibly consistent. Finished 6th in the championship. Was actually joint 5th with Cameron Dowse, who left to go to PSGL PC halfway through the season. But started off with a 10th, couple of 4ths, a 9th, and then 2 7ths, and then 3 6ths to finish the season off. On one hand, that's very impressive consistency, but he's probably going to be slightly irritated that he couldn't just find that little bit more and get on the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, you know, we've had a theme this week of drivers who couldn't quite get on the podium in their careers, finally getting one. Absolutely loved that, by the way. A long-time Nico Hülkenberg fan I am, so I really put a huge smile on my face on Sunday. But, yeah, maybe Volokongan can take inspiration from Hülkenberg's heroics yesterday and get himself into the fight for the podium today, but he's going to have to do a better qualifying lap than that. It's incredible, less than 3/10 off of pole position, and he finds himself in 16th place on the grid. So it's clear that it's going to take a mighty lap from anyone to get themselves further up this grid, and it's really going to feel, I think, on this circuit as well, because the times are so close. It feels like you can get another 10th somewhere, but when you actually go out on track and go for it, you just find how difficult it is to get every last 100th out of each corner, because you can't put a foot wrong on a track as short as this. So that's really going to play in the drivers' heads, knowing how close they are, or seemingly are, to pole, but seeing themselves so far down the grid. Mario's Formula in the Alpine just starting his presumably final run as he heads down towards turn 1. A little bit of a snap of the rear as he turned in, but he seems to have gotten through just fine. But 1.5 tenths to pole. Can he close that down anymore?
Well, we're going to see the delta. He's down by 11 milliseconds in the first sector, cranking the steering lock on the run-up into turn number 3, trying to get that front end to behave and respond and react to the inputs that he's putting in to that Alpine car. The dark baby blue and the bright freesia, I think that's the word. The freesia pink. I could be absolutely waffling. I'm not an expert on colours, everybody. Cass, just won in F4. Congratulations, my friend. Hopefully you enjoy some PSF1. There is a little bit of traffic here for Mario's Formula to deal with. A, the distraction, B, a little bit of dirty air, contributing to not an ideal middle sector, but it is up by 12 milliseconds. You would imagine this is going to be his final lap of the session, but look at this, more traffic to deal with. Mercedes, Ferrari, both on the right-hand side of the circuit, and a Haas absolutely parked in the middle of it. That almost will be a slam dunk penalty, front wing damage for Mario's Formula on a qualifying lap that has been absolutely wrecked.
Yeah, that is the Haas of SCI Fraser, who's currently in last place, and I think he's going to find himself with a hefty penalty for that. But we'll let the stewards decide on that one as he starts his final run in the Haas. He'll know full well what he's done. He'll have felt the contact, and I'm sure he'll have his head metaphorically in his hands. But plenty of other drivers coming across the line very, very shortly, including the Sauber of Rayan to start his final run. But Enzo in P2 goes very wide at turn 9, and that's going to be his lap over. He doesn't have enough ERS to go again, so that is going to be his qualifying over. Front row at best for the Sauber driver as the laps start coming in. We've got Armateo coming across the line and only improved by 1,000th of a second, and funnily enough another 2,000th, and it would have got him a position. That's how close this is as Alex Lofer gets himself onto provisional pole. What can Finley do behind? He's way down. No improvement from the former pole sitter in the Haas, as more and more laps are going to tumble in now as we get into the final closing stages of this session.
I think there are some drivers that try to play this smart and give themselves maybe a couple of opportunities to get the laps on the board. Finley being one of them, Owen being another. Oscar from 5th jumps up to 3rd as the checker flag is going to be flying very, very shortly. 102.8 for the Papaya McLaren car. Can anybody push him further down? Mario's Formula, unsurprisingly, is done in this session. It's P11 at best for the Alpine car. Still cars all over the place. Finley is invalidated. He's not going to be getting that pole position back, and after 2 attempts, he's not managed to get even one of them over the line. It's second at best. Alex Lofer still holding that provisional pole. Enzo Sabaton's done. We're looking for Owen, who's down by 2/3 of a tenth through the first sector. That is not a lot of time at all. The checker flag is out. Azam's done in P6. Nico Source up to 9th. Kazizel, who was in 3rd at the start of the session, 15th at best. Yasisaki also done. I believe that Aston Martin is in the pit lane. We're watching Owen, who at one stage was a provisional pole sitter in the Alpine. His teammate is further down the order than he would have liked, but he's down by nearly a 10.5. This is probably Owen's charge cooling. Is there anybody else finding time? Brando's down by 14 milliseconds. Zinedine's in the pits. I think this is going to be an Alex Lofer pole masterclass.
Yeah, I think so. Oscar's backed off and says Owen spins around the final corner. He was already invalidated anyway, but yeah, spectacular end to his qualifying session. I don't think anyone else really is improving. Ryder goes straight into the Alpine across the line, but that is going to be that. No one else on a lap, so it's Alex Lofer who takes the first pole position in season 40 of PSGL PSF1. What a lap right at the end from him. Finley will still be happy to be on the front row, but it is quite a mighty gap. 76 thousandths of a second around Austria is a decent gap, so a very, very impressive lap there from Alex Lofer. And, well, just look at those times all the way down the grid. This is going to be a fantastic race.
I wonder if there are potentially some more shenanigans that were occurring in those final couple of qualifying laps, because Rainy Bakar is missing a front wing on the front of that Sauber. So an interesting one, but Alex Lofer, starting as he means to go on, finished third in the championship last season, will be hoping to go a couple of spots better. Finley on the front row, Oscar ahead of Enzo Sabaton, and Owen rounding out the top 5. Asma ahead of the 2 Aston Martins, reigning champion Armateo going from P8. And then it's 2 Mercedes cars following in suit. Marius Formula was impeded on his final flying lap. He'll start from 11th ahead of Brando. Zinedine on debut in 13th ahead of Ryderdal. Kazizel Dirk, Volokong will be disappointed in 17th, especially being less than 4 tenths off pole. Rainy Bakar and SCI Fraser completing our starting grid. That was a very exciting qualifying session. Some of the big names are at the sharp end, but some of them are a little bit further down and do have some work to do in our 36-lap race. I've got the numbers right this time.
Yeah, they will do, and it's going to be exciting to see whether they can pick their way through the pack. I think it's harder to do that on this year's game than it was on previous editions. And well, it's going to be even harder now. That looks like heavy rain. I think it's still going to be inters, but I'm not too sure. I think possibly it would be a little bit darker if it was full wet, but it could well be either. I'm not entirely sure right now, but that is going to be something that the drivers are going to have to adapt very quickly to. That obviously no practice to get used to the wet conditions. They'll have to go straight from pushing for every last thousandth in the dry and qualifying to suddenly trying to survive on the wet tyres in these torrential conditions. So it's going to be tricky, and especially on the first race of the new game, this is very harsh on the drivers, and it's really going to separate the very best.
Well, turn 1 is a pinch point anyway here at Austria, but I think this could be even more concerning for some of the drivers, in particular in the middle of the pack. You've got to be so careful, because you can't really clatter over the sausage curb on the inside in these conditions, because you'll spin and get spat into the barrier on the right-hand side. And equally, you can't go over the sausage curb on the left-hand side on the outside of the corner, because you'll spin and get spat into the barriers on the left-hand side. So it is going to be, well, effectively threading that needle, but you're threading the needle through a very, very tiny hole. And you've got 19 other drivers battling for the same piece of very, very damp tarmac as well. So going to be fascinating to see how the drivers play this. They were probably hoping that it might have been a little bit drier going down into turn number 1, and hoping for a bit of a standard start. They can get warmed up, get their feet into the door, and get their season up and running without any dramas, any melodramas going on into turn number 1. We wait for the strategies to be applied. The fuel loads are going to have to be altered as well. Use less fuel in the wet conditions. Will it be the wet tyres, which you know aren't particularly competitive, or will it be the inters, like you said, that they favour in these conditions?
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be some drivers on that grid who'll be celebrating to see this. There are many drivers who really like the wet conditions and thrive under this kind of tyre and this kind of situation. So we'll see who among the grid is going to be those types of drivers. I don't know if you know of any wet weather prowess drivers from last season in PSF1, because I know that some struggle more than others, and it's often clear which ones are the best in the rain, but sometimes not so clear.
We didn't have too many wet races last season, so I'm trying to rack my brain. There's a lot of fuzz in there that I can't quite pick out, so I'm not going to be able to identify anybody. What I do know and you probably have experienced it as well. The handling model can be quite floaty in these conditions, quite slidey. You have to be very delicate with the rear end, A, because you're going to burn up the rear tyres from sliding and drifting so much, and B, because you don't know what's going to be happening. It's a lottery down to turn number 1. What numbers are you picking, everybody? It's 5 red lights. We're underway for season 40 of PlayStation PSGL F1. It's an even Steven start down in front. Alex Lofer getting away nicely as they go down into the gloom of turn number 1. Bit of contact already. Finlay into the back of Alex Lofer. You can see the green striped intermediate tyres for every driver, at least at the front of the field. Bit of argy-bargy between Oscar and Enzo Sabaton, but by the looks of things, somehow everybody's managed to keep it pointing on the straight and narrow through turn 1. Now up into turn number 3. It's a look around the outside for Finlay. Slightly out of control as Enzo Sabaton clatters into Alex Lofer and Finlay on the outside, but he's going to get a decent exit until he tries to plant the loud pedal into the floor and have a massive snap of oversteer. Fighting through goes Oscar, and everybody's still keeping it very calm and orderly behind.
What a start for Kazizel in the Williams, up 4 positions already as he's going down the inside of both Mercedes into turn 4. What a move this would be from the Williams driver. He's got it done. He's up to P9. That is absolutely incredible from Kazizel. A dream lap 1 for him as Francesco Largo, the 2 Mercedes, also battling, but it's Finlay who's going down the inside into turn 7. What a move from the Haas driver. Alex Lofer's going to try and stick with him, but it's going to be outside for turn 9. Surely he's not going to stick it there. He is going to go for it, but he finally backs out at the braking zone, probably wisely so. So it's Finlay into the lead of the Austrian Grand Prix, and Alex Lofer just behind. A little bit of oversteer at the final corner. A lot of drivers struggling to get to grips with these conditions early on, but it's Finlay who leads from Alex Lofer, who breaks a little early into turn 1 just to avoid going into the back of Finlay, the same thing that Finlay did to him on the previous lap. But just behind, plenty of battling going on as the leaders continue to scrap.
Enzo Sabaton under pressure. Poor run through turn number 1, and now could be at the mercy of the Alpine of Owen trying to, well, hang it around the outside into the braking zone of turn number 3, but he's going to get run out of row, and I think just bouncing over the curb on the outside will give Azim a little bit of impetus and a small opportunity to try and take 5th place off the hands of the Alpine driver. Alex Lofer still continues to be under pressure, this time from the Papaya McLaren. Once again goes Owen. He's trying to dance around the outside of turn number 4, but couldn't quite tango to get into position number 4, and wasn't quite up to speed with his footwork as he holds station in 5th ahead of Azim and Armateo, the reigning champion. Interestingly, though, we spoke about Kazizel's start. He's actually on the wet compound tyre, the only driver on the wet compound tyres in the field, and well, it's clearly very, very moist and very, very damp at the moment as Enzo Sabaton still scrabbling for grip, as is our pole sitter Alex Lofer, who's all over the show. Bit of synchronised sliding between himself and the McLaren of Oscar, and then once again Alex Lofer going to find himself side by side into the penultimate corner. This time he's got the inside line though, and this time he holds the position, and Oscar having to just cool that assault for the time being. He's slightly wide of the apex through the final corner, and suddenly from attack to defence very, very quickly, here comes Enzo Sabaton nipping at the heels of the driver that started 3rd. He's held 3rd for the whole race so far, but could be getting bumped down into 4th. Finlay with the fastest lap. Braver on the brakes is the Sauber of Enzo Sabaton, and Oscar has found himself very much pocket pinched there in the final sector.
Yeah, he has done. That's a very brave move from the Sauber driver, and very impressive to get it done. You can tell I'm a bit rusty because I should have noticed Kazizel was on the wets, but he is going to be very quick in these opening laps as he looks for another move, this time on Armateo into turn 3. Doesn't quite get the exit he wanted, but he's going to be in a great position down towards turn 4. But he is surely going to have to pit if these conditions get any better, as I'm sure they will as the dry line starts appearing in the next few laps. So he does get that position, does Kazizel, but he's going to be in trouble once the dry line starts appearing and the inters start to become the better tyre, as I would imagine they will. But maybe he has got this decision right this time as Yassir gets a move done on Brando. Meanwhile, through turn 6, Brando back at him through 7 is going to be the outside line. We've seen that not working well down towards turn 4, and Brando has decided not to pursue that particular avenue of attack and live to fight another day. But look at the gap up front. Finlay 1.2 seconds to Alex Lofer. He is dominating these first few laps at the moment after getting in front of the pole sitter.
And you wonder if the weather's perhaps just changed a little bit, because Kazizel getting up into 7th, but now still has the reigning champion glued to the rear of that Williams car. Both Mercedes engine counterparts. Kazizel gets the better traction, as you would probably expect, coming out of turn number 1. No DRS, of course, but maybe a bit of battery to play with, and probably running slightly different setups. Kazizel looks fairly comfortable into the braking zone of turn number 3, and that charge just cooling as Armateo holding into position number 8 for the time being. But he's just able to brake so much later. It seems like he's got more confidence than Kazizel, but the Williams has got the traction and the grip. Just power away coming out through the traction zones and just leave him in his wake a little bit.
Yeah, very difficult for Matteo here because he'll have the braking performance by the looks of things, but Kazizel, like you said, has the traction. But for how much longer will he have that traction is the question. We're on lap 4 and you can already see a slightly darker line starting to appear where these drivers are heading through the corners, so it's going to be tricky for Kazizel as those inters start getting better. We're going to head on to lap 5. He's still doing a fantastic job, but you have to ask the question, is he going to have to pit for the inters at some point and undo all of his hard work that's gotten him to this point?
Well, look at this. Matteo is effectively following in the footsteps. Owen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, but he's bogged down in the train that sits behind Alex Loeffler, 1.2 seconds off the back of Finlay. Shaking the rear of the Williams is Kazizel down into turn number, but again he's got the better traction coming out of it, and Matteo is going to be so frustrated at the wheel of the green machine. He's got 8/10 to the second Williams in front. When you think about a dart up the inside, just hovering in the middle of the circuit is Kazizel, but Matteo is not phased by that lockup on the inside front and clatters into the side pod of the Williams. Surely going to get the better traction. We've got to can't stop this. Zinedine, who's potentially had a bit of contact or maybe a bit of a whoopsie down the straight. Kazizel again with the traction to pull away from Matteo, and round number 1 firmly goes to the blue corner of Williams. Kazizel holding 7th position ahead of our reigning champion, the new young upstart in PSGL PSF1, battling away with the double reigning world champion Matteo. And at the moment it's the Williams holding firm, but there's still a long way to go.
There certainly is, and Matteo's not going to want to give this up. He can see that gap increasing ever so slightly as the laps go by to the other Williams ahead of Azam, so he's going to want to get this move done as soon as possible, but he just cannot find a way through. It's the traction of the wet tyres on the exits of corners that he just cannot deal with right now. But heading through the final corner, he's going to have a run here, perhaps down towards turn 1. He is using a little bit of that overtake, but he's going to back off in the end and maybe wait for turn 3 or turn 4 this time. 1.3 seconds. He pushes him again through turn 1. He's got so much better overspeed through the middle of the corners, but it's just the traction on the exit that makes it difficult. He's going to go for it around the outside of turn 3. Kazizel breaks as late as he dares. Is it going to be too late? Matteo with a lovely switchback, but it's hard to get those types of moves done in these conditions, and Matteo loses ground once again. 1.4 now. That gap continues to grow, and the frustration will continue to be there for the reigning champion as he tries another attempt at the switchback. This time it might work out. He's got the outside line for turn 6, and it might well work out. Kazizel, does he have the traction to hold it on the inside with the superior line, though? It's Matteo who gets his way through, finally past that troublesome Williams, and he's now going to go tearing off after the top 6.
Well, it was picture book perfect, wasn't it? Had him on strings almost with the switchbacks he was trying to attempt, and eventually hung it around the outside and found himself with a lovely position number 7 for his troubles. He's always put a second between himself and the Williams behind. The wet tyre is certainly not the compound you want to find yourself on at this stage of the Grand Prix. And as one Aston Martin was attacking, one was very much defending. But a missing person notes out for Yasser Saki, because I did not spot him at the apex of turn number 1 on the previous. That went so wide, and Brando was almost like, well, I'll help myself here, but couldn't quite capitalise and make the move stick. And now it's Yasser Saki that's going to be attacking the Williams, because this was going to be sick to the back teeth of seeing this British Racing Green flash up in his rear view mirrors, because darting over to the middle of the circuit, made that the inside is Yasser Saki, just dangling the front wing and the front nose of that Aston Martin alongside. But once again, as his teammate found, he can't get the traction coming out of turn number 3 to push Kazizel down a further spot.
Yeah, Matteo's already off up the road towards the top 6, and now it's the Ferrari of Brando who's attacking instead. Yasser has got to turn attack into defence, and it's not going to work out. More contact through turn 4, but he's lost the position. He's down to 10th place, and Brando now is going to be the one attacking, and Kazizel, much I'm sure to the chagrin of Yasser behind, makes a mistake through turn 6, and Brando says thank you very much. Straight down the inside, easy position for him, but I think those wet tyres are starting now to become the worst tyre, and Yasser finds his way through, and Kazizel, I think, is darting into the pit lane there. The Mercedes of Nico are having to avoid him, and Kazizel finally has to make that decision to go onto the inters. And well, it was a dream start for him, and it looked like those wets might be the right choice, but as that dry line came about, he's just ended up with not enough grip compared to the others on inters, and he's forced to head into the pit lane for an early stop. He'll be frustrated, but he took the gamble and it hasn't worked out.
I mean, you could see he was absolutely all over the place. In particular, in that final set, the tyres were screaming for mercy. It could be Silver Civil War. Down the inside goes Francesco Largo, trying to nab 10th place away from his teammate Nico Source. They're still neck and neck as they come through the traction zone, and down the crest they go, charging towards turn number 4. This was where the Papaya McLarens in the real-life race about 9 days ago were scrapping it out very hard. On this occasion, it's Francesco Largo that sees the high ground and gets ahead of his teammate. And now the second Mercedes has got a very feisty-looking rider now potentially to deal with, but not quite getting the traction he would have desired out of turn number 4 and through 5 is still Nico Source holding 11th place ahead of the Red Bull car. Speaking of Red Bulls, that gap out in front has just stabilised a little bit. Alex Lofer still hovering around a second off the back of Finlay. They've been trading fastest laps, and well, we were talking on the previous lap about Kazizel being all over the place. Nico Source not with an optimal line going through turn number 8, and now he's going to have a Red Bull charging down his inside, lunging down his inside of the penultimate corner. Somehow they both keep it within the white lines, but Nico Source perhaps sensibly having to cede the position. Ryderdale, opportunistic as ever, finds himself up into P11.
Yeah, great move there from Ryder, and in these conditions you're going to see those types of moves at corners that you don't usually see overtakes being made at this circuit. If you can just find that extra grip, you can send it down someone's inside and live to tell the tale. But Nico Source now under pressure from the green Sauber behind. Ryan down the inside into turn 3, but he's overcooked it slightly. There's contact as Nico will be frustrated because now Marios is on his inside as well, heading to turn 4, loses the rear as he gets on the curb too, and Mario, I think, is going to have that position, so that's 2 positions lost in nearly as many corners for Nico Source, and he'll be frustrated with that one as he pushes the Alpine through the exit, but there's nothing he can do. Down to 14th for the Mercedes driver, and just look at the impact that Kazizel has had on this race. He may be down in 17th battling with Zinedine Hadjad right now, but he's certainly had an impact on the gaps up front, because Brando 3.3 behind. Armateo, the reigning champion, in typical fashion has caught back up to the top 6 and is challenging them very, very nicely. He's right behind the Williams of Azam, but Brando a long way back thanks to the battling he had to do with Kazizel, who's now pitted, so he might feel aggrieved by that one, as Enzo Sabaton is the first victim of track limits in this race, and he's got himself a 3-second penalty, and it's Matteo again down the inside for turn 3. This time he doesn't have to contend with the better grip of Wets, and he's going to get that move done, is he? They're still side by side down to turn 4, but Azam's going to back out of that one, and Armateo up into the top 6.
Beautiful stuff. Opportunistic had to be done as the reigning champion tries to find his way through the traffic, and is very much in the thick of it, in that lead group of 7 cars. 7.5 tenths off the back of Owen. Equidistant Armateo to Owen to Oscar, who is still behind Enzo Sabaton, and like you said was the first victim of the 3-second time penalties for corner cutting. Alex Lofer's managed to halve the gap between himself and Finlay, dragging everybody behind with him also. And Finlay suddenly is going to have to be looking behind him, looking in his mirrors, because Alex Lofer will be trying to get that first place back, thinking that's what he rightfully deserves after the pole lap that he put in. And they could be trading blows once again as we start lap number 11.
Yeah, they could indeed. The fastest laps coming in from first Owen, then Armateo, and then Brando, who's got the clear air. He doesn't have to deal with the dirty air, and then plenty of other fastest laps coming in from other drivers as well. But Brando now, that gap looked like it has stabilized at about 3.3 seconds, but now it's starting to come down, 2.5 for the Ferrari driver, and I wonder if he will smell blood from all the drivers having to deal with the dirty air ahead. And of course, you don't get the benefit of DRS in these wet conditions. So it's going to be easier for a car that's further behind to catch up, especially with that dirty air and any battling that may be happening. Armateo making that move probably helped Brando out a little bit, but speaking of rain, it has definitely calmed down 100% since the start of the race, quite significantly I would say, and I wonder if we're going to go heading to dry conditions in the next maybe 10 laps or so, because it does seem to be easing off. And the track certainly doesn't look like there's any puddles on it anymore, but we know it will still be very damp for these drivers to drive on, so it's going to be their call when the time is right if this rain does end up stopping. But Finlay out front setting a new fastest lap as he tries to regain that gap to Alex Lofer, and Fraser now getting a penalty for track limits as well further back.
Brando, though, punches a fastest lap in of his own. It was about the same time that Finlay set, so the gap stabilising at 2.6 seconds, and the Ferrari finding himself in a little bit of no man's land. 2.6 off the back of this leading group of 7 cars. Kazizel now with the fastest lap, of course, on the much fresher intermediate tyres. 7 lap pressure tyres that he bolted on those Williams on the wheel rims of the Williams. That's a bit of a tongue twister that my tongue wasn't quite adept enough to try and spit out. Further down, like we said, penalty for Fraser, bogged down right at the back of the pack, battling away with Dirk outside of 1 second. To Nico Source in front, who's not really particularly happy, you would imagine, still down in 14th after that. A little bit of a shoulder barge as Rainy Bakar muscled his way through, let's say, down into the braking zone of turn number 3. But look at the gaps, equidistant pretty much out in front. Enzo Sabaton the furthest back at 5.5 tenths of a second. The dirty air isn't seemingly having too much of an effect on our drivers at this stage. Of course, they aren't going to be running towards the end of the Grand Prix either on this set of intermediate tyres, so we need to see what the tyre will be, how the rear tyres are, how the front tyres are, as Brando again slams in another fastest lap, 4 tenths of a second quicker than Finlay on the previous turn. He's looking very, very racy in that Scarlet Ferrari.
He absolutely is, and that gap is slowly but surely coming down. He is going to be happy for this rain to keep going. He does not want the cars ahead to get any benefit of DRS, because that is going to halt his charge well and truly. But another fastest lap from Kazizel. But the fact that Brando beat Kazizel's fastest lap, even though the Williams driver's on only 5-lap-old inters compared to Brando's 12-lap-old, is very impressive and shows just how quickly he is going in that Scarlet Ferrari. We're about a third of the way, well, just over a third of the way through this race now. Plenty of time to go, plenty of time for things to change, but the rain doesn't seem to be easing as of yet, at least in comparison to the previous lap. But it will be very clear when/if it does get any drier, as Brando now gets within 2 seconds and Finlay gets passed by Alex Lofer down towards turn 9. Completely missed that was happening. I do apologise, but Finlay now having to battle for his lead of the race. Alex Lofer down the inside, and I think Finlay's just going to let that go. Oh, what is happening to Finlay actually? He's losing so many positions. There's got to be maybe a technical issue with the Haas car. It just doesn't seem to be accelerating at all compared to everyone else. I don't know what's going on with Finlay, but he is going to be absolutely gutted that this is happening. He's going to get eaten up by the cars behind as well, who are smelling blood from the former race leader, as Mateo gets his way through into P5, and that is just devastating for Finlay. Who could have thought the season opener to PSF1, and he has a technical issue. He looks like he's got it back under control now, but at what cost?
Well, hearing in the chat that there have been some wheel issues, we believe, for Finlay, not just in the race, but pre-event also. Now he's having it out with Azam, trying to hold on to as many positions as possible, and does staunchly defend that 6th position with everything that he has left, and keeping the Williams firmly in his back pocket. Although, look at that, glued to the rear wing of the Scarlet. Not the Scarlet. The, what do we call it? The Maroon? No, not Maroon. I think it was Maroon about, what was it, 6 or 7 years ago, the Haas car. And it was in, was it Austria actually that was Maroon, when they ran the special livery to look back on 100 races in Formula 1. He has managed to stem the flow and hold on to 6th position, but it is 9 tenths off the back of Mateo. No DRS as yet, but you don't want to be falling too far off the back of your rivals. He's just going to have to get his skates on now that it seems like those issues have been resolved.
I think it was Austria. I think you're right. That might be what you're thinking of. But no, it's very much a white rear wing this year, as Azem is going to be looking at and struggling to compete with, at least to start with. It's 6.5 tenths. He's still well and truly in range. And Brando, look who's joined the party. The Ferrari car now just 7 tenths behind. And well, there's no DRS yet, but if there was, he'd be within range. And that's the crucial thing. If it does get enabled at any point here, you don't want to be the car that's 1.5 behind, because suddenly you're going to find yourself losing all that time once again. And Yassir will know that. He's 1.5 behind right now, and he'll want to close that gap as the others have to deal with the dirty air. 1.3 now as he heads through turn 8. Francesco Largo just behind, getting himself a track limits penalty. And I wonder how many drivers are going to fall victim to those white lines today, because it's very difficult, this circuit, to keep it within the white lines and maintain your full pace. And I wonder how many penalties we will see today and how much impact they'll have on the final order, because Enzo Sabaton right now would drop I think all the way down to 8th, maybe even 9th as it stands with that penalty. So he has got a lot of work to do if he wants to retain the current podium position he finds himself in.
Absolutely, and I think it's even more problematic because Yasser Saki and admittedly Francesco Lager, who also has a penalty, they're not too far away either. They've just been closing up. Yasser Saki's put in a few purple lap times, and that gap was close to 1.3 seconds off the back of Brando. Things have just stabilised once again. Things have calmed down right at the front. People are happy in the positions they're in. If you look at the track map, that leading group of, 14 cars, they're not that far apart. So say there's a mistake from somebody in there, everybody's going to start converging, especially if the mistake comes from one of the 8 drivers in the leading train. That could be 10 drivers in the leading train because Yasser Saki now 1.0 seconds off the back of Brando, and if the DRS was going to be enabled very, very shortly, he'd be sticking the toes out of the front wing of that Aston Martin just to try and get as close as he possibly can to the back of that Scarlet Ferrari. And a bit of a wobble coming through the final corner for Brando allows Yasser Saki to now cruise up inside the 1 second window and make this a 10-car train scrapping for the lead, albeit with 2 of them having 3 second penalties looming over their heads.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ryder made it 11 in a couple of time, because it does seem like as soon as these drivers get into the wake of the drivers ahead, they suddenly just lose all the pace that they had in the clean air. So we are seeing the impact of this new dirty air model on F125 already here in Austria, thanks to these wet conditions. And well, it's going to be a very tricky thing for any of these drivers to make up positions as it stands. The rain's still coming down at a pretty constant rate over the last few laps, so doesn't seem to be any hint of dry conditions yet, but you know, you may get a situation where it's still raining but the slicks start becoming the better tyre as the dry line establishes itself. And Finlay now over a second behind Matteo. He is struggling to stay with the Aston Martin and stay in the the fight for the top 5. Azem right behind, but not close enough to make a move. So I think it's less any kind of issue for Finlay there, and it's just difficulty in the dirty air. Obviously, he's been driving in the clean air at the front of the field for the vast majority of the race, so he's got to adapt, and it looks like he's finding that difficult at the moment.
And you can just see Oscar there at the bottom of the screen, the McLaren pulling out of the DRS and out of the slipstream, not DRS, the slipstream of the cars in front, just to try and cool the temperatures, you would imagine, the engine temperatures, because these drivers, the likes of Alex Loeffler, maybe less so him, but Enzo Sabaton, Oscar, Owen Armateer, they've been following each other very, very closely for effectively the whole race, the first 50% of this Grand Prix. So the engine temperatures might be quite high, so just trying to get a little bit of cool air into that McLaren car, into the Mercedes power unit, might be a fairly smart strategy. Finlay, I think, is struggling again with that wheel issue. Yes, he's stuck in 7th gear. It's almost like a real-life car problem, and he's tumbling like a stone once more, down to 10th position from 6th. This created a buffer, actually, for the top 5 to try and scamper off. 1.5 seconds now the gap between Matteo and Azem. But Finlay's day, after qualifying on pole position, just going from bad to worse. He's got the gears back once again, so the gearbox correcting itself. Can he shift down into the penultimate corner? Well, he stays in 7th. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you would imagine he'd shift down now. Yeah, really struggling with those paddles. And if Finlay can't get this up and running again, he might find himself in quite the spot of bother as Ryder's arriving on the scene very quickly. And yes, he's pulling over to the side.
Oh, it's such a shame for Finlay, from leading the opening race of the season to a technical issue taking him all the way out the points. I would imagine this is going to be a pit lane retirement.
Sorry to jump in there. Oscar's just been tagged by Owen down into the braking zone of turn number 3. That was out of the blue, isn't it? It's been very clean, really, this leading group. Yeah. But Owen, maybe just a little bit later on the brakes. Owen was tucked up, or Oscar, sorry, was tucked up underneath the rear wing of Enzo Sabaton. Enzo wasn't that slow into the corner, and Owen potentially just blindsided a little bit, running into the rear of the McLaren. That could have been quite the nasty one, because Owen was very much sideways, wasn't quite perpendicular to the road surface, but definitely had to crank on some opposite lock to keep it pointing on the straight and narrow and then get round turn number 3. So the first signs of maybe a little bit of impatience perhaps in this leading group of what is now 5 cars as Azem continues to drop away.
Quite possibly, but the rain has stopped, and I think we're seeing drivers peel into the pits now for the slick tyres. It's early, and I do wonder if the track is still going to be greasy, even though the rain has stopped. So pretty much the entire grid into the pits. Does anyone risk it and stay out? I don't think so. I think everyone's coming in. Yeah, everyone in the top 13 all coming into the pits. So it's going to be hard tyres to the end, I would imagine, for all of these drivers. Enzo Sabaton getting himself out, not quite ahead of Alex Loeffler. Oh, does he? No, he does. He does get out ahead of the Red Bull, and Enzo Sabaton finds himself in the lead of this race, and he's going to be extra gutted about that time penalty now if it ends like this.
Well, he's going to be thanking the game, because he was ghosted. He rejoined in between Alex Lofer and Oscar, but because they were so close together coming down pit road, Enzo Sabaton was just chucked in front of them and said, here you go, sir. Why don't you lead the race for the second 50%? And Alex Lofer's not going to be pleased about that one jot. The DRS has been enabled, so the rear wing flaps are open. Alex Lofer was under a bit of pressure down into turn number 3 from the Papaya McLaren behind, but managed to hold on to second place and now can set his sights once again on a different car in front of him. It was the Haas, it's a different Ferrari customer team. It's the Sauber of Enzo Sabaton, but he has to remember he's got to stay calm here. 3-second penalty for Enzo Sabaton. He's not going to win this race. Massive wobble there for Oscar coming through turn number 6. Code brown for the McLaren car because he was almost finding himself skating, cascading across the gravel on the right-hand side, but well, he's managed to just control himself. Owen hasn't got past either, so he holds third position, what is a net second place, and still on the podium, of course. And that would have just opened his eyes a little bit to the conditions. Obviously, with it still being slightly damp, these hard tyres are going to take a while to get up to temperature, you would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. But look who's got himself into the top 10 and setting the fastest lap by pitting 1 lap earlier than everyone else. He took a gamble, did Ryan Bakar, in the kick Sauber as Alex Lofer makes the move on Enzo Sabaton, who's losing so much time in the straight down towards turn 3. The lead of the race changes once again, and it's Alex Lofer who takes it. But the DRS open now is going to mean that these lead changes are going to become more frequent, I would imagine. Enzo's got to look behind him, though, for the McLaren of Oscar, who can't quite get the move done. It's brilliant defending from the Sauber driver as his teammate, meanwhile, gets the move done on Francesco Largo down towards turn 4. But Enzo Sabaton there losing so much time on the straight. You could see him get caught up by all the drivers behind thanks to the DRS. And Alex Lofer, well, he'll be happy to be in the lead, but he'll also be thinking, well, is that going to be my fate on the next run to turn 3?
Well, I think it was courtesy of a mistake actually from Enzo Sabaton, who fell off the circuit going through turn number 1. Alex Lofer said, thank you very much, I'll take the lead back. That was rightfully mine in the pit stop window. And then Oscar was absolutely harrying, hustling at McLaren, ducking and weaving, looking for any opportunity to try and find a way through. But Enzo Sabaton was driving the widest kick Sauber in the world, and Oscar having to hold station and stay in third place for the time being. Now he's got a car, a barricade effectively between himself and Alex Lofer, who's the main target that he's trying to chase down to win this Grand Prix. He's got a couple of angry drivers sat just in his wake also that'll be trying to take that podium place away from Oscar, who has driven a good race so far. The likes of Owen, the likes of Armateo's done well after a slightly underwhelming qualifying session. Azam's back in the fray as well. The gap was 2 seconds, but the pit stop phase really helping that Williams driver out. 0.3 of a second out the back of the reigning champ, with Brando just lurking, spectating, watching everything unfold in front of him, potentially waiting to pick up the pieces. But if he's going to get on the podium, at least he's going to have to get a shift on fairly shortly.
Yeah, he'll be delighted to be back in this race, though. At one point, remember, he was well over 3.5 seconds down on the leading pack. So he's done very well to get himself into this position. And he had to work hard in the wet to get himself in the DRS train for when the dry conditions came. But by the way, Nico Source might be a driver who'll be happy with how things have transpired. He'll definitely have felt he was unlucky earlier in the race. But now he finds himself possibly in with a shot at least a singular point from this race. 2.5 seconds behind Yasser, who's got himself 3 seconds of time penalties. So just a quick word there for the Mercedes driver, who's in a tense race of his own to try and salvage something out of this race, although he does seem to be losing time on the Aston. But although he gains it all back through turn 3, so maybe a mistake from Yasser. But the top what is that? Top 7 drivers all incredibly close together, and anything can happen in this last third of this thrilling Austrian Grand Prix. Alex Lofer in control at the moment, but as the laps tick by, the drivers are going to start getting more and more desperate, and we may see some outrageous, possibly not the word, but ambitious, I think is better, moves into some corners with the DRS. Only lap 24 for now, and the drivers will know that they've got to keep their cool until the time is right.
100%. It's almost a waiting game now. Who blinks first? Which chess piece of the puzzle goes first and tries to make that move? Will it be lap 30? Will it be lap 35 that everybody waits and tries to hold their position? Or will some of the drivers further back in this train think now's the time to bolt, try and put some pressure on the cars in front? It might be Oscar challenging the kick Sauber. Enzo Sabaton looked very quick at the start of this when the the slick tyres were put on, but Oscar just shadowing every move that kicks Sauber through turn 3, through turn 4 and 5, but Enzo Sabaton potentially using a bit of battery, but then switching the ERS off, so he gets really good drive out of turn 4 and just halting the charge of Oscar from behind, and he just had to go a little bit defensive, didn't he, down into turn number 4 to make sure that Oscar didn't try and send it up the inside. But now look at the run he's got, not using any ERS, but Enzo Sabaton once again under pressure down to the penultimate corner. Oscar almost pushing the Sauber into the braking zone, but staying behind once more and getting a face full of dirty air to boot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult to follow through those high-speed corners in the middle sector. And Oscar did well to get himself in that position, but then you get to the last two right-handers and it's just all gone again. You just get so much understeer in the wake of the driver ahead. But Enzo Sabaton at the moment still a little too far back from Alex Lofer to make any sort of move. Breaks very late though into turn 3, very nearly into the back of the Red Bull. He would have had his heart in his mouth briefly there, but he's gotten away with it. As it stands, that 3-second penalty he's got to his name is going to cost him oh so much in this race. He's had such a fantastic performance up to this point, but P7 is what he's looking like at the moment, so he'll be praying for more track limits penalties from the drivers behind. But I think the only thing that's going to get any of those drivers a penalty is going to be not judging the dirty air correctly and the understeer you get from it, because at the moment they're all happy to just cruise along in the DRS train. I don't think anyone's looking for anything yet. Maybe in the next few laps, as we tick over to lap 30, it'll perhaps spark a sense of urgency in these drivers that are following. But what can you do when you're in a DRS train like this with the dirty air through the high-speed corners? It's so difficult to find a place where you can make a move, and you almost have to wait for a mistake from the driver ahead.
Drivers will make mistakes. That is human nature, of course. You've just got to be in the right place at the right time to capitalise when somebody does make that mistake. We've got an extra wild card thrown in because we have got Zinedine, who's getting lapped by this leading group of 7, very kindly getting out of the way, but only if one of them... Oh, is that an AI car? Because he's almost rammed into Oscar, who has to go the long way round into turn number 4. This is really going to push him away from Enzo Sabaton and, crucially, Alex Lofer. I think that is an AI car driving as Zinedine dropping past or dropping behind all 7 of them. Mateo goes very wide through turn number 6, almost dips that front right tyre into the gravel. The DRS train hasn't been broken somehow, but that was a bit concerning for some drivers. Oscar first and foremost.
I'm not entirely sure how they've all gotten away with that. That looked extremely difficult to navigate. Very a testament to the driver's skill that they managed to get through that lapped car without breaking the DRS train. Absolutely incredible as they all head through turn 1 for the 27th time. Francesco Largo, by the way, starting to close the gap a little bit. 1.7 seconds between him and the top 7 now. Ryan Bakar trying to follow just behind still, but they both do have time penalties to their name, so they'll have to hope for some penalties ahead or some mistakes. But if they're in the mix, if they're sort of in the vicinity, as long as you can see the cars ahead, you will feel in your head that there's a chance that something might happen, and that will certainly be what they're hoping for. But they'll probably be just focusing on the track as it is for now, because they do have that clean air, but as they get closer, it's going to get dirtier and dirtier and more difficult to deal with. So it might be difficult for them, even if the train starts slowing down ahead, to get back in that 1 second range, and even more difficult to pull 3 seconds to anyone.
And our job now, as things continue to just remain fairly stable, even with the interruption of a lap car getting out of the way, we need to try and work out who's going to throw the first punch. Owen's very close to the back of Oscar coming out of turn number 1, but with the DRS for everybody barring Alex Lofer at the front of the train, it's so difficult to try and get a run on somebody out of a corner if you don't see them make a fairly sizable mistake. Enzo Sabaton looks so brave on the brakes, braking significantly later than Alex Lofer, even though he's arriving with significantly more top-end speed than the Red Bull in front. So maybe that's something that we need to bear in mind when he's defending and attacking if he does get shuffled down places, or indeed tries to go for the lead on track, maybe thinking he can get his 3-second time penalty for corner cutting removed, which is of course possible. The game can sometimes give you a bit of a harsh treatment with the track limits, and if you feel you didn't go off the circuit, you can ask the stewards to have a little bit of a look-see. Equidistant first, down to 7th still, 0.3 to 0.4 a second. You can put a blanket over them. They're so closely matched and so close together. And when you're fighting with this close quarters battles, as we are probably going to see in the final couple of laps, it can get quite tense and it can get quite difficult just to position your car exactly where you want, because you have to be so precise and so accurate with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, Alex Lofer will be happy to be in the position he's in. It's obviously easier to drive without that dirty air, as Enzo has a big moment by the looks of things out of turn 1, but manages to hold on to it. But, yeah, Alex Lofer, of course, only took 1 win last season in Silverstone, finished P3 in the standings in the end, as we've said. And, but what a start to the new campaign this would be if he can hold on to this race win. He's got 7.5 laps left to go to hold on to this, and he's got a car's buffer between him and his nearest rival, because Enzo Sabaton, of course, with that penalty, although he won't want to chance it. You can sometimes see these 3-second penalties getting removed in stewards if they weren't as fair. So Alex Lofer won't be particularly pleased if he does let Enzo through, just in case that is going to be the situation in stewards later. So he will want to hold on to this lead on track, even if he doesn't have to on the day. He might feel like he may have to later. And Brando there getting a 3-second time penalty right in the closing stages of this race.
Already Bakar's off.
Ryan, yeah, into the wall at the penultimate corner by the looks of things, and he'll be gutted with that because he was on for some decent, at least a couple of points today, but now back down to 14th, and with a time penalty, that's surely race over for him in terms of getting anything out of today. But Mateo, by the way, pushing Owen through turn 3, and I think lap 30 has come around, and I think that's kicking these drivers into gear.
Alarm bells ringing for the drivers towards the back of this train that have got to make their move fairly shortly if they're going to finish A on the podium or B right at the top of this field. Couple of mistakes there. It was actually Dirk who brought out the first yellow flag, having a chat with the barrier coming out of turn number 3, and then Rayan Bakar seemingly losing it all on their own accord going through the penultimate corner, maybe just taking a little bit too much curb on the inside and doing some lawn mowing very kindly for the organisers and the managers of the Red Bull Ring circuit. End of lap 30. We've got 6 to go. Count them down, everybody. It's still Alex Lofer who has a buffer, let's not forget. Enzo Sabaton with that 3-second penalty. If Oscar or Owen or Armateo and the like are going to win this race, they've got to get past that Kick Sauber, who's looking very, very speedy and crucially is very brave on the brakes. It's going to be a very difficult task to try and fight your way past Enzo Sabaton, who is getting out of the slipstream, trying to cool the engine, trying to cool the tyres as well. A couple of other drivers have been doing that in this DRS train in the preceding few laps also, just trying to get their car in the best nick possible going into the closing salvos.
How close they are together through turn 3 is incredible, and Francesco Largo is in a great position. He has closed them down ever so slightly the last few laps, and 1.4 is now the gap, and he does sense a position possibly on the cards here, because Brando with that penalty is the perfect driver for Francesco Largo's point of view to get a penalty, because now he's got a chance to gain another position in this race. If he can get past that Ferrari, he's into the DRS zone now. 1 second or 8/10 between him and Brando. That 31 or 36 though, he is running out of time, and he is going to want to make that move. You always want to get as many positions as you possibly can, and having run in basically by himself for so long, other than swapping positions with Rayan Bakar for a few laps, he is now finding himself in a position to possibly gain another point or two. So big moment here for Francesco Largo in these last 5 laps. Nico Source in the top 10 as well, and looking possibly for P9 too, thanks to Yassir Saki's penalty. But Alex Lofer 3/10 ahead of Enzo. Is there going to be a move from the Sauber into turn 4? Not this time, and not for anyone else in this lead DRS train either. It is tense in these last few laps, but no one can really make any sorts of moves. Everyone is driving too consistently at the moment.
Enzo Sabaton did actually make a little bit of a mistake. We've spoken a number of times about how late he brakes. He was a little bit too late down to turn number 3. Was all locked up, all crossed up. Oscar sensed the smallest of potential opportunities to get ahead of the Sauber, which he's been begging to do so for the last 14 laps since they came out of the pit lane. Alex Lofer and Oscar were glued to each other coming down pit road as Enzo Sabaton spawned in front of them as he jumped out of his pit lane, was ghosted, and then found himself almost falling into the lead of the Grand Prix, but then getting overtaken by Alex Lofer after a bit of a mistake through turn number 1. Owen trying to capitalise as well, but was unsuccessful in doing so. 4 to go. Once again, you can see drivers Enzo Sabaton, the main one, getting out of the slipstream, trying to cool the car. Owen thinking now's the time to bolt those. He launches it up the inside of Owen, potentially catching the McLaren slightly unawares. Bit of a wobble, bit of a weave from Oscar on the exit as they battle down the hill once more. Who can hold on to what is a net second place in this Grand Prix? Owen might feel this is his only opportunity to try and get ahead of the McLaren to give himself a chance of winning this race in the closing stages. Oscar hanging it beautifully around the outside, but he's got a moving roadblock in front of him. Enzo Sabaton could be the spoiler, could be the joker in the pack as Owen tries to hang it all the way around the outside, but gets a bit loosey-goosey and has to concede defeat on that occasion. It was brave down the inside, caught Oscar unawares, but couldn't quite make it stick.
That was a fantastic attempt from Owen. He really gave it everything there, and there's still a few more laps left. If he senses that Oscar's a little slow out of the correct place on the track, looks like, I think that was Kazizel going round further back, but it's all about these drivers at the front as we enter lap 34. Just 3 laps to go in this thrilling season opener, and don't forget about the reigning champion either. Mateo in the mix, using some ERS as he heads down towards turn 3 as well. Is he going to catch Owen unawares just like the Alpine did to the McLaren? Oh, it's very close. Mateo had a look, and then Owen braked very late, nearly went into the back of Oscar ahead, but they've gotten away with it in single file in the end. Azam just behind, waiting for something to go wrong as well, as Brando his goal now is just to hold off Francesco Largo to secure P7 in this race, but Enzo Sabaton nearly pushing Alex Lofer through this middle sector, losing a bit to the dirty air through turn 6, but he's well in the mix, and as long as he doesn't make a mistake out of turn 1, he might take the lead of this one on track. But of course that penalty would demote him, and Alex Lofer, as long as he can hold off Oscar behind, will manage to win this race. Just 2 laps to go in this one.
You wonder if Owen potentially has laid his cards on the table slightly too early and maybe gone all in and found himself busting, because he hasn't got as close to Oscar on this time around. Still half a second plus the rest off the back of the Papaya McLaren as we cut the beam to start the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. Alex Lofer, you would say, is comfortable out in front, but he's still got the Kick Sauber very close behind him. In fact, he's got a Kick Sauber just ducking and weaving underneath the rear wing of the Red Bull Racing car. Alex Lofer still holding on to the lead ahead of the Sauber that has the penalty. Owen once again got close, very close down into the braking zone of turn number 3, trying to muscle his way past the McLaren. It looks like Alex Lofer might have a bit of a rear gunner here. Enzo Sabaton made to go the long way round, but Alex Lofer staunchly holding on to that position. Enzo Sabaton doesn't look like he's got a lot of urgency, let's be fair, to try and get ahead of this Red Bull Racing car. You would think he wants to get into the lead of the race. He can then control the pace and maybe give himself an opportunity of picking up an extra spot perhaps with that 3-second penalty, if he can just try and extend the pack out and group everybody out a little bit more as we head on to the final lap.
I think maybe he's more looking at trying to get him on the last lap, so Alex Lofer has no chance to reply. He's saved up a lot in the tank for this one. Final lap of the Austrian Grand Prix, 36 of 36. It's been a thrilling race with different conditions throughout, but we're in the dry now. We're on to the final run as Enzo gets a decent run through turn 1, but not as good as Alex Lofer in the end. He's going to use a lot of ERS, but so is the Red Bull to try and defend. I don't think Enzo's close enough into turn 3. He looks to the inside briefly, but he has to concede as they head through the corner, pushes him through the apex. Can he get a run down towards turn 4? The Sauber driver is going to give it absolutely everything, but so is the Red Bull, and Alex Lofer looks like he's going to hold on here. Enzo just taps the back of him through turn 4, but I think Alex Lofer has done enough. He's just got a few more corners to navigate to win his opening race in PSGL Season 40 F1. Kazizel sets the first lap further back, but it's all about these top 8 rather. There hasn't been any changes in position this lap, and it looks like everyone's run out of opportunities.
Alex Lofer, 2 corners to negotiate. He's had to work hard for it. He's been under pressure from a driver sat in position 2 that can't even win the Grand Prix. As we round the final corner in the Styrian Hills, it's an Alex Lofer victory to kick off season number 40. Owen and Oscar complete the podium places. Enzo Sabaton dropped down to position number 6. Brando and Francesco Largo at the back of that train of cars, finishing 7th and 8th. Marius Formula and Nico Source rounding out our points paying positions. Finlay, your heart goes out to the pole sitter, was in a really decent position, but wheel problems ending his assault at the 50% distance. And he did pick up some time penalties to boot as well. But it's Alex Lofer, easy as 1, 2, 3. That was the position he finished last season in the championship, but kicking off this season with 36 laps of perfection to take his first win of the campaign.
What a drive it was from Alex Lofer, and I just expected someone to send it and absolutely go for it on the last lap there into one of those corners, but I think everyone just got too good an exit out of the crucial corners, and there wasn't really any opportunity for anyone to go for a move, and it would have been frustrating for those drivers in the pack, but I mean, it's testament to the skill of all of these drivers on this grid. Fantastic stuff from all of them, and many congratulations to Alex Lofer, the Spanish driver, getting himself on the top step of the podium for the first time since Silverstone last season, and he will start off his campaign being the championship leader.
Absolutely, the best position to be after round number 1, spraying the champagne. You would imagine he's going to be doing that a few more times. We can actually look at the stats that everybody gets at the end of the Grand Prix. Race winner goes to Alex Lofer, fastest lap for Kazizel, Maro's Formula with the driver of the day. Most overtakes for Kazizel, and Maro's Formula the cleanest driver. We didn't see too much of him, let's be honest. But there is your result. It's Alex Lofer from first to finish first. But it wasn't quite as easy as he made it look. Oscar rounding out no, he's not. Owen rounding out the podium places with Oscar in between them. Armateo, reigning champion, kicks off his season nicely with a P4, as Amenzo Sabaton, Brando Largo, Marius Formula, Nico Source, your points finishers. Down the bottom, we can just get there. Fraser, Ryderdal, Rayan Bakar, and Dirk, I believe, the retirees. Have asked if anybody wants to do an interview. We were given quite a firm no, which is not ideal at all. People clearly not particularly keen to come and speak to us, which is fair enough, to be honest. We can be quite annoying. Well, maybe not you. I can be quite annoying to talk to.
I don't know about that.
We're going to see if there is if Alex Lofer is going to jump in there. I don't think so. We're going to give them maybe 30 seconds or so. But, guys, what a race to kick us off. We had an interesting battle right at the front, but I think the biggest thing we learned is the difference in the handling mechanics, the physics engine from 24 to 25, because overtaking was a lot harder than it was on previous games.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that DRS train, those 7 and then eventually 8 cars throughout that entire final stint on the hards, and so we were just waiting for it all to kick off. And everything to start happening. Drivers going for moves on down the inside into turn 3 and turn 4, and we did see 1 or 2. We saw Owen going for it. That was an excellent attempt from the Irish Alpine driver to get a move done into turn 3, catching the McLaren of Oscar by surprise, but it didn't quite work out, didn't quite get the traction down to turn 4. And yeah, in the end, the drivers just had to sort of sit and wait for a mistake, and when no drivers make a mistake, there's not really much you can do. So Alex Lofer was in the best position as it turned out. We thought he might be under some pressure thanks to the DRS behind, but yeah, I think it's going to be a little harder to overtake, like you said, this year, and also it's going to mean that qualifying is going to be all that bit more important. So if you have a poor qualifying, like some drivers did today that we perhaps expected to be higher, it can lock you out of a chance to go for the top positions unless you really, really have an excellent drive. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season, and the drivers are certainly going to take that into account and maybe give more focus to their qualifying performances as the season goes on, and you might see drivers have differing or improving performances on that 1 lap pace, as especially if they figure out early on that they're not as quick as they thought they would be over 1 lap.
100%, and I quite like it. Drivers have to work a little bit harder for those overtakes. We don't just want to see the standard DRS open, dump the battery, fly past like the car can do it so easy, like you're travelling at 70 miles an hour in the outside lane of the motorway. That's how easy you could overtake on the previous game. This time, you have to get yourself in the right position at the right time. You have to work for those moves. And I, for one, am absolutely all for an Alex Lofer kicking off the season with a brilliant, brilliant drive. And we said that mistakes were going to come, but to be honest, once he got into the lead after the first round of pit stops when they switched from Inters to the hard tyres, he was bulletproof.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an incredible drive from Alex Lofer, and I think the Kicksauber behind just waiting for a mistake lap after lap after lap, and it just never came. I don't think I even saw Alex Lofer have a single major moment out of any corner. He was seemingly on rails in that Red Bull in that final stint, and he did a brilliant job to hold on to that victory. He did have the buffer, of course, of the 3-second time penalty, but I don't think that changes too much because, like I said, during the race, you still want to finish ahead of a driver with penalties just in case. You never know what can happen in stewards. So he did an excellent job to keep him behind the whole way, and especially in those last couple laps where it looked like he was going to be under a lot more pressure, and there were going to be perhaps a massive send into turn 3 at one point, but it didn't appear. Alex Lofer held on, and what a drive it was. And also a mention to the podium finishers too, especially, the Alpine of Owen going for that move, giving us some great entertainment in the last few laps. Didn't quite work out for him, but he was the only one brave enough to try it, and why not when you're in a position like that? And it may have gotten him P2 if it had worked out.
He saw an opportunity, he went for it, couldn't quite make it stick, but it was a really good battle, wasn't it, with a couple of laps to go between our two other podium finishers. Of course, it doesn't look like, unfortunately, we're going to be getting any interviewees jumping in to have a bit of a chat with us. Marcos was clearly absolutely delighted with the performance of Alex Lofer. If he's still here, Marcos, you are free to celebrate as much as you desire. Just before we go, let's have a quick look at the calendar once again. Austria is done. It's in the record book. We don't have to go there for the rest of the campaign. Next week we go to a very different circuit. I almost think we're as far away from Austria circuit-wise as we could be. It's the Jeddah Corniche circuit in Saudi Arabia in 7 days' time. They're both high-speed circuits, but that's probably where the comparisons end.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Jeddah is one of those tracks where you can have drivers very close together at most tracks on the calendar, but it just tends to be one of those tracks where just some drivers have that extra edge at Jeddah and can really find those few tenths that others just cannot. And I wonder who those drivers are going to be next week, and I'm sure we'll find out in qualifying, but then of course the race is a different story. And with this dirty air model on this year's game, Sector 1, especially in Jeddah, and honestly most of the track, because it's so many high-speed corners all the way through, it's going to be really, really difficult to follow, and it's going to be a real test of the drivers and their understanding of this new handling model.
100%. And then we go to another very different circuit in Spa in 2 weeks' time. If you missed the chat right at the start about the calendar, we then have a break. Then we go into two very legendary circuits: Imola at the very beginning of August. That'll be for us. Then Silverstone, Hungary, Bahrain. We then have another break week before we go to Kota, Texas, and then the final for Japan, Vegas, Brazil, and Mexico to round us off for season number 40. It seems like quite a long way away, all the way down to the 6th of October, but I assure you those 14 weeks will go very, very quickly indeed. And that is just about it from us. I'm going to hand over to you very quickly, Ghost. If people want to check out what you do outside of commentating for PSGL, where can they find you?
Can I mention other leagues, or should I steer clear of that?
We'll go the socials. We'll go the socials route.
Okay. You can find me. Well, I've just made a new Twitter account that's going to be exclusively to point to my Blue Sky. So you can find me there. It will be simply Ghost Commentary. All one word is going to be my Twitter handle. So feel free to follow me on there. On Blue Sky, I will be posting any commentary that I do, as well as anything else that takes my fancy. I'm not really a social media kind of user, but I'm gonna try a bit harder to to be a bit more active on it this year. But yeah, you can find me out there, and yeah, would be very happy to have you along. But thank you so much for having me for PSF1 today. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to join you in the commentary box. Yeah, I don't know if I'll be back to F2 next week. I assume so, and Daka will be back, but I'm not entirely sure. But if this is the last time for this season that I commentate with you, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for having me.
echo the same things. Very, very enjoyable, absolutely lovely stuff. It was a lot of fun to have you alongside me. If you're interested in some of the waffle that I get up to at TW6 on Twitter or X, if you're a darts fan, over on TikTok, wilco.darts over there. That is just about it from us. Thank you ever so much for joining us on this Monday evening. We will be back in 7 days' time for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Can Alex Sofa make it 2 from 2? We'll have to wait and see. But until next time, thank you for joining us. It is a pleasure as always, and we will see you very, very shortly. Goodbye.